They were just your average American family on a pilgrimage to see a moose.
Clark, what are you doing?
National Lampoon's Vacation.
This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
Not just a road trip, a quest for fun.
We're all gonna have so much fun.
You'll be whistling Symphony Doodah out of your... Who the hell ever says that?
But the story behind the production is as wild as the movie itself.
There was some debate about how far the car should fly.
And that thing took off, man.
I was driving like a maniac.
I get in his face about the death of this dog.
The best delivery of a line I've ever heard.
Explain this, you son of a...
How's the work?
Exhilarating.
I was so stunned, I just burst into tears.
How crazy was that story?
Well, everybody does that.
But Daddy says I'm the best at it.
Wait a second, did she just say what they think she just said?
Classy.
With production crises,
It's a logistic nightmare.
We were actually sort of living the movie.
medical emergencies,
And I thought, oh man, I don't want to kill this woman.
and an epic journey into the American heartland.
Hey, by the way, will there be a laugh track?
You know, there's a trick to these maps.
It was just a little trip to America's favorite family fun park. But somewhere along the road to Wally World, it took a detour into uncharted territory,
Roll him up.
spinning wildly out of control.
Well, up and at him.
There were so many elements that brought people to that movie because you just don't really know what might happen to these people next.
Don't you kids knock anymore?
It was like taking your family on a trip to places they'd never been.
It was one of those scripts, man, you just read it, you were just laughing out loud.
You didn't have to do a lot of thinking, but you were certainly laughing.
It really is a journey, and by the time you get to the end, you're just very satisfied.
National Lampoon's Vacation. In the summer of 1983, audiences came out to see it, and over nearly 3 decades, they've just kept coming, spawning a franchise of 5 films and counting, pulling in nearly $250 million at the box office.
I look back on Vacation, you know, this is great, triple pleasure of doing it. Experiencing the success when it came out, and the fact that people still care about it and enjoy it is amazing to me.
I think it was the right kind of comedy at the right time, and obviously starring a great comedian who won the hearts of everybody who watched it.
Vicky, can I help you with that Kool-Aid? Please?
There were wonderful moments throughout the picture that I'll never forget.
It wasn't exactly high art, more just plain lovable.
There's something special about it. There's something that viscerally you connect with. Yeah, that movie wasn't using special effects or big overacted histrionic scenes to catch your attention.
It was a simple idea, just a family vacation to Wally World.
First, I didn't want to take this vacation. Now I'm glad I did.
That's my comedy. That's the kind of stuff I like to just throw in.
A cross-country trip with a few wrong turns.
When the family falls asleep in the car, it just cracks me up every time.
There's a scene where Clark is driving along, and all of a sudden he says, "What's that smell?"
Russ, your feet.
I love that scene. That's so real to me.
She has a foot fetish. I didn't know this.
One of my most favorite scenes was where the dog had been tied to the bumper. And that's not a good thing.
I'm going steady.
My French kiss, and she says,
So everybody does that.
and I say, yeah, but Daddy says I'm the best at it.
Wait a second, did she just say what they think she just said?
I definitely understood what it was meant to mean, but maybe not what it truly meant.
It's so funny, but yet so horrific at the same time.
The scene that always stops me is when Chevy loses it. And he uses every obscenity he can think of.
You're all in the head. We're 10 hours from the fun park, and you want to bail out.
It's a quest for fun, and you're going to have fun, and I'm going to have fun. We're all going to have so much fun.
You'll be whistling Symphony Doodah out of your...
Which is so shocking, but you know he's just lost his mind.
That's one of the reasons it holds up, because people can relate to that. How your family just drives you crazy.
But most of all, what drew the audience was the family itself.
People love this film because everyone has their horror story to tell about their family.
The dad, he's determined to have this great holiday.
Everybody's had some kind of family experience where one person's trying to deliver, it's not happening.
He tried to plan it all out.
Everything that's supposed to go right goes wrong.
It's always Clark trying to get out of something that he had screwed up.
But he means well. He means well.
Like Ahab chasing his whale. Like Don Quixote with his impossible dream. Vacation's father was just trying to track down a little family fun at Wally World.
Clark Griswold is the quintessential father figure who wants to make sure his family has the greatest vacation ever.
That great spirit and what a father will go to give his family a great time.
It's kind of a testament to the craziness of your family. Those are the people that you have to love and you can't avoid, and yet often you want them.
At its core, it's the story of a family that's off course. In more ways than one. They're trying to find their route and reconnect.
Everything rings true because it really wasn't so far away from what was really happening in the American family.
If there's one thing Harold wanted to do, it was portray this as a real story.
The worst situations are just kind of interesting to me.
I stabbed my brain. I just got my period.
I saw it as a romantic comedy. To me, it was always a romance between these two people with these kids.
No, it's just a love story between Rusty and beer. It's the only part I remember.
We're gonna have fun.
That can was empty, by the way. We layered in that.
What they didn't realize at the time is that they were sketching out a new type of comedy, both hipster edgy and hometown friendly.
Rusty, come on up here.
Russ! Oh, there you are.
Oh, Russ?
I do that all the time.
The original conception was that it was a satire. But what happened was all of America identified with it.
It's kind of a postcard to the American family. Are we there yet? Can we pull over? Can we eat? I gotta pee. Everybody can relate to that.
For a novice director, a first-time screenwriter, and a handful of fledgling actors, National Lampoon's Vacation would be their big break, as great elements led to great chemistry. Chevy Chase at the height of his fame as the dad on a mission.
I'm not your ordinary, everyday fool.
It's like Chevy discovered his inner nerd as Clark Griswold and let that all come out.
Chevy's a great guy to work with. We just kind of instantly fell into a thing.
Beverly D'Angelo as the long-suffering wife and mom.
When things were just going crazy, she kept the family together.
They have a great dynamic. She was a perfect choice to play mom.
She'd already decided on how to behave around Sparky. What's the point in arguing with a madman?
Anthony Michael Hall and Dana Barron as the kids along for the ride.
Immediately, we got into bickering, arguing. We'd be like nudging each other and bugging each other. And I mean, we were kids.
Harold and I just turned to each other like that.
Maddie and I looked at each other and said, that's great.
And it just worked. Brother and sister, it hit right away.
I had kind of a crush on her then. It was a little odd. Dana was a little hottie. Can I say that now?
Eugene Levy as the fast-talking car dealer.
Eugene's a great improvisational actor.
You think you hate it now?
Well, wait till you drive it. That was a funny scene.
He can do anything, that guy. He's so damn funny.
And then there was the dream girl in the dream car.
There we were with Christy Brinkley.
She was a natural. And she was so cool. She was great.
Our prayers were answered.
And finally, there was that automotive star, that den on wheels. The family truckster.
I think we took a Ford wagon and modified it. They changed the front, they changed the paneling, and we picked that horrible color.
It was the metallic P. And the reason I have one of these is because I sold many since then. So I keep one of these in my pocket.
But as successful as the movie would become, for those who created it, the story behind the filming was as wild as the movie itself.
We had these crazy moments as travelers and as a family and as actors.
It wasn't approached by masters who were going to make a blockbuster. It was like a garage band, you know?
Everything just gets out of control.
It was 80s. There was a lot of stuff going on.
It was an epic cross-country caravan of 100 people in nearly 24 trucks and trailers over 1,000 miles.
It was like a road movie. We literally just kept going west.
There were 300 feet worth of vehicles. It was like a big traveling circus.
We were like a caravan. We'd move 6 times in 7 weeks. It kept everyone so excited because we were always going to a new place.
What made vacation special is that we were all on a vacation together. We were all doing a road trip within a road trip.
As Vacation pushed the boundaries of comedy, from the inappropriate
Did you ever bop your baloney?
to the downright disturbing.
I mean, every time I'd start going, poor little Booch,
Probably kept up with you for a mile or so.
Chevy would just crack up.
I don't know how we could keep a straight face.
And along the way, the cast and crew would battle brutal heat and extreme conditions.
It was like 120 in the shade.
It was tough conditions.
We were in the middle of nowhere, so remote that Indians came to the catering truck.
The crew guys were like falling out, passing out.
Not to mention a crisis on the set, as one actor suffered a medical emergency.
We had ambulances come. We were worried.
It was one of the most surreal experiences that any of us had had on a movie set.
And just when they thought the whole movie was wrapped, a screening bombed with the test audience.
Suddenly, all the air went out of the movie.
Last 20 minutes, not a single laugh.
Dead silence.
It was as bad as I feared.
This is Vacation, the inside story.
Dad, I forgot. Why aren't we flying?
Why aren't we flying? Because getting there is half the fun. You know that.
It was the early 1980s, the era of Madonna and Reaganomics. National Lampoon had just released a pair of box office flops. Class Reunion barely made back its budget, while Movie Madness went straight to video. The Lampoon was desperate to reclaim the runaway success of Animal House 5 years earlier. They needed a hit, badly.
It was the place you'd go to when you really wanted irreverent, funny stuff. It was starting to fade in popularity.
Founder Matty Simmons was fighting to save the Lampoon when a young writer named John Hughes showed up with a story about a cross-country trip from his childhood. It was called Vacation 58.
John and I had a very close relationship. We worked together for many years before that. And if he wrote a short story, he'd come in and kick it around with me. I loved it.
Simmons thought it would be a great movie, but not everyone agreed.
I remember showing the short story to Jeff Katzenberg, who was the executive vice president of Paramount Studios. He read it, he said, no, it's too episodic. I mean, they're going from one place to another. It'll never make a movie.
But Matty wouldn't take no for an answer. They took the articles to an executive with a flair for comedy at Warner Brothers, Mark Canton.
John showed me the article Vacation 58, and I bought the articles for an embarrassing small sum of money. And it's all cool because John went on to make a fortune.
Low money or not, John had sold his story.
We then assigned the writer who wrote that short story to write a script.
And the executives began hunting for a director. Canton thought of young filmmaker Harold Ramis, and even though he had struggled to complete Caddyshack, it had ended up a cult favorite.
Harold Ramis coming off of Caddyshack, he had finally figured out which end of the lens to look through.
I learned to let go of what I couldn't control, take responsibility for what I could control.
Harold Ramis is the easiest human being to work with in the whole world.
He has such a sophistication, and yet he's like the king of the cheap joke. He's one of the smartest guys in the world of comedy.
They thought if they were going to make a movie like this, he was the guy to make it.
When the script came in, Ramis was sold.
Matty came to me with John Hughes' script.
I remember us both reading it at the same time. He was in his office and I was in my office. Probably by page 20, we were both giddy with how funny the script was. I don't think I'd had that experience before.
Now the director needed a star, and he knew just the man for the job.
I was very hot at the time, and I was still full of all of that, of the fun of being famous.
Harold Ramis, Mark Canton, and I, all three of us said, boy, Chevy would be great for this. It was just never a contest.
Labeled the funniest man in America, Chevy Chase could deliver exactly what the film needed.
Oh, well, they were looking for a good driver.
I directed Chevy in Caddyshack, and we had a very good rapport.
I think Harold was mentally ill. No, I think Harold was charmed by the script. I loved Harold, and certainly I loved the idea of making this kind of a movie, an epic travel film.
As much as they loved Hughes' script, Ramis felt it needed a different point of view.
John Hughes, as demonstrated by the rest of his career, was really interested in teenagers. His whole focus for the Vacation movie was what is it like to be an adolescent in the back seat when your parents are on this dorky vacation. But I'm interested in what's going on in Clark's mind. Once we hired Chevy, I thought, what kid is going to be more interesting than Chevy?
Ramis wanted to focus on the father, Clark Griswold.
So I kind of pitched that to Chevy, and Chevy and I rewrote the script. We changed a lot of dialogue. Not sure how John liked that.
Harold and I had a little office over at Warner Brothers. That's how I got involved. Any further memories, you'll have to dig out of me.
Chase and Ramis sat down to reshape the character of Clark Griswold. It would be a new kind of role for Chevy Chase.
Chevy was about being Mr. Cool. I'm Chevy Chase and you're not. He was handsome, he was elegant, he was above it all.
Harold thought I was a sex symbol, and he's got good taste.
He was the hottest thing going, man. He's tall, handsome, very waspy.
All his stereotyping was about being Mr. Cool, about being the Cary Grant of our generation.
Women loved him.
Here he had a chance to play the dorkiest guy ever. It's like Chevy discovered his inner nerd as Clark Griswold and let that all come out. He'd never used that before.
But as Chase and Ramis honed the character of Clark Griswold, they wanted to make this suburban dad more than just a punchline.
Harold gave me the character. I always give him this credit.
He said, you know, I don't have kids. How do you see this thing? We talked about a guy who has 2 weeks off and tries to cram all his parenting into 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, he's going to be the world's greatest dad. The rest of the year, he's like totally not available.
All of that became this character, this energetic optimist who can't wait to get to Wally World. So he's clearly got the IQ of something above a lemur.
So one of the great things about being a father, no matter how little you know, it's always more than they know. The examples I gave Chevy is, you know how a car engine works, kids, you know. And as soon as I said that, he said, I got it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's a long time ago, and I can't tell you exactly. I can tell you that I did play Clark, and I could play him again.
With the character of Clark locked down, they knew they had a funny story and a funny leading man. Now all they had to do was cast the rest of the movie.
We went through dozens and dozens of auditions.
We didn't see anyone who we liked. We were kind of in despair.
Can I do your back, honey?
I've already done my back.
Can I do your front?
Go do your own front.
In early 1982, the producers of Vacation had their hands full. Chevy Chase was on board, but they were scrambling to cast everyone else. The first task, Clark's wife, Ellen.
What they wanted was somebody really sweet and pretty and sexy, an all-American mom, but also someone who was kind of hot.
The producers had an idea for the role.
I remember Kim Cattrall coming in. Every time I see Sex and the City, I think, oh yeah, she could have been Ellen Griswold.
But the actress they really wanted was Beverly D'Angelo. She was the right combination of sexy and maternal.
You know, I really just started acting, but I'd done a lot in 2 years. Coal miner started the film of Perry.
But Beverly wasn't too interested.
Got the script. I didn't even want to read it. It had everything that if you wanted to be a serious actress, you wouldn't do. Dogs, kids, playing a mother of teenagers.
So Beverly's agent convinced her to audition, and she and Chevy hit it off almost immediately.
She really knew how to adapt herself to Chevy.
She was so understanding and sweet, but also a little bit smarter than he was.
They felt right as a family.
She was quite something to look at that age. So I believe she was 38.
I was 29 at the time.
Just kidding, Beth.
Next came the role of the love interest, the hot babe in the hot car.
We had the difficult task of considering all the beautiful women that were in Hollywood.
In the early 80s, supermodels were just becoming huge stars, from Cheryl Tiegs to Brooke Shields. The producers knew right away who they wanted, the hottest model in the country.
Christy was like at the height of her CoverGirl career.
I got a call from my agent one day saying, how would you like to be in a movie? And I was like, whoa, like for what? And he said, oh, it's National Lampoon's Vacation. It's a comedy. So I just said, oh, okay, you know.
Christy was laid back, but the cast and crew were in love.
There we were with Christy Brinkley.
She was a natural, and she was so cool.
Drop dead gorgeous.
Oh, my God. She's a beautiful woman.
I never understood why she didn't do more as an actress.
Our prayers were answered.
She was a big model at that time. Remains to this day a big model. She's 6'8".
Clark, come to Wally World with me.
Oh, my God. She was the Sports Illustrated pinup. All the boys on the crew, we were very happy. Christy showed up.
Christy looks the same today. It's a sex symbol. I don't know if she's ever had sex, by the way. No, I really don't. Just kidding.
If finding Christy Brinkley was a pleasure, casting young Rusty Griswold was a real problem.
When you're casting kids for any movie, you have to find a kid that can truly just be themselves.
We went through dozens and dozens of auditions.
We didn't see anyone in LA who we liked. All the kids were just too big, too energetic, too bright.
Harold and I went to New York, and once again, we auditioned 50 boys.
We were kind of in despair.
And this boy walked in, and he had braces.
I was a kid living in Manhattan, being raised by my mom, and just went in for an audition.
Anthony Michael Hall walked in, and he read it so natural and so honest and so underplayed. I thought, well, it's like Marlon Brando. This kid is like a real actor.
Harold and I just turned to each other like that.
Maddie and I looked at each other and said, that kid is great.
He's Rusty Griswold, but he's got to keep the braces.
I was, over the moon when I got the job. It was just a thrill for a skinny kid from New York to suddenly be a part of this big party.
With Rusty in place, his sister was much easier to track down.
I got to audition for Michael and Harold to see if there's chemistry between Michael and I. And immediately we got into the bickering, arguing scene between the two kids. My sister and I had that natural sibling rivalry, so I was able to transfer that right on to Anthony Michael Hall. And it just worked, brother and sister. It hit right away.
Hall liked the casting too.
Danny was a little hottie. Can I say that now? I had kind of a crush on her then. It was a little odd. It's just so funny when I look back at that movie. It's like being trapped in a yearbook or something.
And then there was the last traveler on this trip, Aunt Edna.
We were trying to think of older women that you would love to hate. That would be really funny.
We were thinking of hiring a woman named Martha Ray, who'd been a huge television star in the 50s with Milton Berle. And then Imogene's name came up.
As soon as I remember bringing up her name, they were just so excited.
I was a huge fan of the Sid Caesar show. She was a regular on Sid Caesar's programs.
There was only one problem for Imogene.
She had a morbid fear of travel because she'd been in a serious car accident. And our agent said, oh, they're not going to really go anywhere. They'll shoot it on the back lot. It'll look like you're going somewhere. Well, of course, we were traveling like 1,500 miles in the movie over mountains and stuff. And she was so freaked out. She was really traumatized by the travel aspect.
But despite her apprehension, Imogene decided to do the movie. Rounding out the cast was a great group of character actors. From novices like Jane Krakowski.
I had never been in a movie before, and I remember thinking that Anthony Michael Hall was so professional.
To comedians like Eugene Levy.
I was just thrilled to be in it. Chevy Chase and Harold Ramis. Had to be a smart, funny movie.
Plus stage and screen veterans Miriam Flynn, James Keach, Jim Staley, John Deal, Mickey Jones, Randy Lowell. The final piece of the puzzle was Chris Jackson as the lovable pimp.
Yo, mama.
The cast was set. Now they just had to take this show on the road. But right from the start, Vacation was pushing the limits.
That's the St. Louis Arch. It's over 600 feet tall, and there's an elevator all the way to the top.
Wow, Dad, can we go up on it?
No.
By April of 1982, Vacation was cast, but the team was facing the next hurdle. Like Jack Kerouac, they had to get on the road. John Hughes' script had the Griswolds heading south, but Harold Ramis had other ideas.
John took them across the South, which is very barren and not much to look at. And I thought, well, why not send the Griswolds through all the most beautiful country in the West? So we rerouted the trip.
Location managers Bill Borden and Sam Mercer were given a mission. Find the best locations for an epic journey.
I rented a car and just started driving the route that Chevy was going to drive.
We drove basically the roads you would drive if you were on a vacation. We needed a couple small towns, interesting landscapes, backgrounds of barns.
The things that we tried to find were emblematic of the United States.
Going off the lot was an unusual thing at that time, and one of the major players in the film was the locations. Location managers were so important because they had to pick the right locations at the right time and get the right cooperation from the right people to do it.
They found key locations in Durango, the Grand Canyon, and Monument Valley. What they couldn't find was the iconic farmhouse they needed for the very first location.
I would wander through dirt or lonely paved road, and I'd go out and I'd scout and I'd meet the farmers. They were so friendly, I was like I couldn't get away.
Then he saw the ideal little farmhouse located outside Pueblo, Colorado.
I found what I thought was the classic-looking farmhouse.
The house and its location were perfect for the shoot. It just needed a little work.
It was a farming family. This was hitting the jackpot for them. Not only did they get to have their house in a movie, but we even painted the house and we put up wallpaper.
Meanwhile, back in LA, they were putting the finishing touches on one more key element. That star of any road movie, a hot car. Or maybe not.
I think we took a Ford wagon and modified it. They changed the front, they changed the paneling. We picked that horrible color. Throw up green.
Putrid, green, woody.
It's so horrible.
Just hideous.
Just kept evolving and evolving.
The car was designed by Harold to be the ugliest looking car you could come up with.
I remember the day we went and saw the final one. It was so atrocious looking. Even Harold thought, this may be too much. Just too horrible looking.
The car became a character.
Hideous or not, this movie monster was ready for its close-up when production started in July of 1982.
That was when we first saw Chevy's character up on his feet.
Where's my old car?
The car crushing. We invented that whole thing, that they demolish his car while he's waiting and ends up with the wagon green.
Clark gets sold a smooth car by a smooth operator, Eugene Levy.
This is not the car I ordered.
You didn't order the metallic P?
Metallic P?
So I knew exactly what character I wanted him to play, the shiftiest guy in the world.
The car that Chevy's character had ordered didn't come in. I mean, I was selling him another car. I don't think anybody had ever seen anything quite like the Truckster. I wouldn't call it classy. I wouldn't say it had style. I would say it was a bit of an ugger.
For me, it was just eyes wide open to suddenly be working with their established, great comedic actors. You know, I just looked up to all these people.
We knew right from the get-go that Clark was an easy mark because of how brilliant Eugene is.
You think you hate it now?
Well, wait till you drive it. That was a funny scene.
He's so damn funny. I love him.
With a car and a map of locations, the movie was off and running. Cast and crew set out on an 8-week trip. First stop, Pueblo, Colorado. The Griswolds had come to visit their poor relations, the family of Cousin Eddie, played by Randy Quaid.
Eddie might come from anywhere, maybe another planet.
They weren't just meeting Cousin Eddie, they were meeting the whole clan, from young Vicky to little Daisy Mabel.
My own daughter played Daisy Mabel, Randy Quaid's daughter.
That's a trivia thing if you want to check that little piece out.
That was kind of like, you know, sort of the white trash sequence.
Some of the moments between especially Chevy and Randy were so funny. Like when he offers him a beer.
He hands me the end of his beer, his swill, after this long drive to get to his house, and then gets another for himself.
Was just made up right then and there, and I just thought, oh God, that is so hilarious that they're just making that sort of stuff up as they go.
Inspired by the improv, Jane made up a few gags herself.
I remember very clearly the Kool-Aid scene. There was Kool-Aid in a pitcher and water. I just sort of started making the Kool-Aid with my arm. I remember Chevy watching me do it and then suddenly telling Harold we should film that.
How do you like yours, Clark? Oh, medium rare, a little pink inside. Vicky, can I help you with that Kool-Aid? Please?
It's like, da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
It's funny to me that a family that was as lowbrow as Eddie and Catherine, that people just loved them.
Obviously, the entire family is a little bit off.
I mean, I guess they represent like the worst relatives that everybody has.
The one cast member who everyone worried about was Imogene Coca.
I remember Harold Ramis. I don't know whether Imogene could do this or not. He goes, oh, believe me, she can do it. She can do it. And she's telling me, I can't do it. I'm afraid I'll fall. She acted like she was so frail and so worried. They yell action. Boom! Door opens. She's got all the shtick going. She's got the faces. And I just cracked up. Once she heard action, she was off.
Well, am I going to eat or am I going to starve to death?
And with Aunt Edna came her furry companion. Rounding out the cast, the four-legged star,
Dinky.
This lovable mutt was trained by animal stunt specialist Jules Sylvester.
Dog was so spot on. He could do everything, just hand signals, and he'd just sit down, lie, back up, everything he wanted to do. He was just brilliant. It was like driving a Rolls Royce.
That dog I worked with on another film. That dog is working more than I am. Just great for him.
With Edna and Dinky on board, the Griswold clan was heading to Wally World. But before they left, Randy Quaid's cousin Eddie had a little gift.
Oh, those are great, Dad.
Quiet down, Russ.
And boy, do they smell.
It's a nice shoe right there.
They shellac these things.
And then there's that great moment where he leans in to kiss Beverly, Randy.
He'd go to like kiss me, kind of like.
And then Beverly just kind of like edges out of the shot.
Then avoid the kiss, avoid the embrace.
Ducking the relatives, it was time to head out of town, in the film and in real life. But this trip was going to be a little more than anyone bargained for.
It's a logistic nightmare.
What they didn't know was that the wheels were about to come off this road movie.
It was one of the most surreal experiences.
We were worried.
Imogene just forgot that we shot a whole scene.
I said, oh my God, she's had a stroke.
Moose, moose, we know. Marty Moose. Marty Moose, Marty Moose, Marty Moose. Yuck, that's me.
It was July of 1982, and the cast and crew of Vacation were setting out on a 1,000-mile journey.
They went to Colorado and then worked their way back across the country.
We were like a caravan. We moved 6 times in 7 weeks. It kept everyone excited because we were always going to a new place.
Cruising west through Colorado, the biggest challenge was simply handling the logistics.
You're moving a circus, 8 or 9 big trucks, plus 5 or 6 big trailers, 100 people. It's a logistic nightmare.
A lot of the movie is in very remote places where weather or logistics could totally screw you up.
It was a big puzzle to figure out. We would start the week one place, and by Friday or Saturday, we would then drive 100 or 200 miles.
And there was none of today's technology to set things up.
It was before cell phones, internet, emails, even the big satellite phones didn't exist. They had to send like a camel.
Hollywood had made comic road movies before, from It Happened One Night and Road to Singapore to The Great Race, but most were actually made in the studio. Traveling cross-country, they faced challenges like how to film in and around a car that was actually moving. They came up with the process body.
We took one of the cars and we removed its wheels and we mounted it on a trailer at the same height the car would be driving if the actors were driving it themselves.
I could actually stand next to the car and just talk to Chevy through the window or while we were going down the highway at relatively high speed.
A couple of times I actually rode on the hood of the car and operated the camera.
We had 2 accidents. And then he was in the back seat the rest of the shoot.
I was fearless in those days. Action! There was no safety person on the set watching after us. And I'm glad there wasn't.
There were no accidents. Everything was fine. We had the right crew.
In the first days of shooting, the challenges of filming on the road actually began to bring the cast and crew together. A connection developed between Chevy and Beverly, a bond that played out on screen.
Chevy's a great guy to work with.
She's an actress, a really great one, and very funny.
We just kind of instantly fell into a thing.
And on the set, each brought something to the film. Chevy, the classic improviser.
You always stick to the script. Then you have a couple of, takes where you don't stick to the script.
And Beverly, the perfectionist.
We'd always hit a point when we were shooting when I said, no, it isn't good enough. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this.
I can make her laugh anytime. She thought I was the cat's pajamas.
It really is fun, isn't it?
No.
They have a great dynamic. You can see that they're very much the couple. She was a perfect choice to play mom.
You always sensed that Ellen knew exactly what was going on.
She'd already decided on how to behave around Sparky.
It's not like she was the dumb wife. She was smarter than he was. She was just like letting him dig his own grave. And isn't that what a relationship's all about?
What's the point in arguing with a madman?
For them, the scripted dialogue was only a guideline. There was lots of improv as they went.
Chevy's a great physical improviser. He loves just give him something to fool around with.
Chevy's a live guy. You got to do stuff with Chevy live.
We just hang out between setups and laugh and think of funny stuff. We always thought that the improv you did was the real last draft of the script. You were just writing it on film.
With technical and creative issues figured out, the production was going strong. But not for everyone. Christy Brinkley was waiting for her scenes, but they kept being put off. At first, the only thing she did have to do was learn to drive a Ferrari.
They gave me actual driving lessons in the Ferrari because there's an extra gear and you have to heel toe the pedal.
Now, in those days, they didn't make cars like that for consumer use. This was pretty close to being a street-legal racing car. I went over to Dick Zyker. I said, Dick, you're going to have to give Christy driving lessons on the Ferrari. To which Dick said, that's no problem at all.
I just take her out and show her how to shift and everything. And, I think it only took one day, not even one whole day to teach her how to do it.
They really wanted me to be able to zoom it off, extra effect.
But the pinnacle of their improvisational comedy was the sandwich scene.
Sandwich scene's hilarious. Yeah, the ass that Chevy does with the sandwich.
I didn't really know how to dance like Christy. That's total improv there. I tried to make just the sandwich dance. I wasn't enticing so much as just filthy. Clark is lost in his reverie, and then he hears
The dog peed on the sandwiches.
the whole thing's gone.
It was Imogene Coca's idea to take a bite.
I think that's terrific stuff. It's very funny.
I actually couldn't really see a lot of the funny things from where I was. Every now and then I would just hear Harold yell out, okay, dance, dance. Give him a come hither look.
Great Griswoldian logic. Slap yourself with a sandwich and you're gonna get the girl.
With the Ferrari girl on the scene, the chase was on, in more ways than one.
That scene that stands out for me is really funny when she pulls up in the Ferrari, making all her sexy faces at Chevy. And Chevy's just like, if I didn't have this family.
As they rolled on down the road, the cast and crew, like the Griswolds, ran into bumps along the way.
The most challenging aspect of this production was moving a company of over 100 people from city to city and state to state.
And then it was like a road movie. We literally just kept going west.
There were 300 feet worth of vehicles. It was like a big traveling circus.
But the more they traveled together through the Rockies, the more they were actually becoming a family.
What made vacation special is that we were all on a vacation together. We were all doing a road trip within a road trip.
It was just a real family vibe. We really all went on this journey together.
We'd pull up to the motels where we were staying and we'd get out our barbecues.
They were so really great to the kids. I remember on the 4th of July, they set up like a little carnival in the parking lot and Chevy got fireworks. So they tried to make it as fun as possible.
When you're thrown together in a remote place where there's no social life or nightlife, everyone goes to the same restaurant, same bars, hangs out. You develop a real camaraderie. It was really like a great big family vacation.
We were actually sort of living the movie a little bit.
And even in these small towns, the movie's big star was still turning heads.
As we were going on the highway from one state to another, I had actually made a sign that said Chevy Chase, and that as we passed cars, I'd do that.
But as in any family vacation, there were crises, and early in the filming, they had a scare.
We were shooting a scene with Imogene in the backseat of the car for half the morning. And I said, Imogene, that was great. We're going to come back after we take a break, and we'll continue the same scene. And she said, what scene? I said, the scene we were just doing. She said, what scene was that? I said, the one we've been doing all morning, you know. And she said, I don't remember what scene we were doing. So I started repeating the dialogue to her. And she said, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I just remember Harold coming over and saying, something really weird just happened. Imogene just forgot that we shot a whole scene.
I said, she's had a stroke.
It was one of the most surreal experiences that any of us had had on a movie set.
We had ambulances come. We were worried.
The cast and crew was stunned. There in the Colorado countryside, Imogene was checked out by the medical staff. If she couldn't continue the shoot, the wheels were coming off this road movie.
She had a significant loss of memory.
She looked very ill.
She'd obviously lost several hours of her life. I was so worried we'd have to replace her. I don't want to kill this woman. The next day she came back. She'd stayed up late with her husband, relearned all the dialogue that had completely wiped from her memory. And we shot the scene again.
Will you hold my purse? Huh? Just hold my purse.
She's such a professional that she wouldn't let it get in the way of her acting.
She was fantastically funny and witty and really a tough girl, man.
It didn't seem to affect her performance. She was unbelievable and sort of a hero of all of ours.
On set and off, Vacation was taking it right to the limit. And soon, they'd be pushing themselves even further.
How cool is this?
Is that a real box of pot?
Maybe we'll just get like a high off of smelling the box.
But there's a lot of stimulation going on. There's Beverly, there's Dana. Christy showed up.
There was an issue about how naked I would go.
Yeah, I kind of had the hots for her. Puberty was kicking in, people.
New car, I'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, kids. Oh, kids. Waitress.
On Vacation, one thing was becoming clear. This road trip was heading into unmapped territory, turning a classic American family film into something racier, with a touch of sex and drugs and rock and roll.
How cool is this?
Is that a real box of pot?
Maybe we'll just get like a high off of smelling the box.
If it wasn't edgy in places, if it wasn't outrageous, it would be a Disney film.
There are moments in that movie where your jaw drops and you can't believe that's happening.
I think that's where a lot of the comedy lie, in the pushing of the envelope.
Sorry.
In one controversial scene, the Griswolds wander into an urban area in St. Louis and run into a tough crowd.
Kids, you noticing all this plight? Roll them up.
Roll them up. Roll them up. Roll up the windows.
If you look closely, we didn't have a window. You'll never see a window go up because we needed to hear outside. I just made this motion.
My concept for this scene was it's not making fun of them, it's making fun of Chevy.
White bread America meeting the African Americans in the ghetto was just a situation that was ripe for comedy.
It was edgy. We were kind of being taking certain chances. Lampoon was always doing stuff like that.
We were actually trying to make a point about the stupidity of racism.
I mean, anybody would know if their hubcaps are being removed while they're talking to somebody. It looked like it was getting dangerous. We were in the wrong part of town.
He's so paranoid that it becomes self-fulfilling. They are in the wrong place because their attitudes are so suburban and they make these assumptions.
It's a total cliche of the white suburban family being so afraid.
And when Clark tries to get directions, the locals aren't exactly helpful.
We're lost, and we're driving through St. Louis. Clark is totally intimidated in a way that only a out-of-touch person can. He figures he'll, talk ghetto.
Excuse me, Holmes? Aha. What it is, bro?
Most people don't make it out of East St. Louis, not in a car like that.
Pardon me. I wonder if you could tell me how to get back on the expressway.
Your mama.
Thank you very much.
There were so many variations to say your mama. It's like your mama, your mama. Say it with love, your mama.
It's the only part of the movie that I watch now and I'm a little uncomfortable. It's pretty politically incorrect. And I don't know that the movie needed that scene.
My cousin was the mayor of Compton. They said, we're going to picket you. I said, why you gonna pick at me? This is my first movie. I got paid. He said, no, we don't like the content of that pimp. Your mama. He could have gave you a more dignified line to say.
I think it was supposed to be a commentary on the state of race relations, but in fact, it was perpetuating those sort of horrible stereotypes.
Further down the road, there were even edgier moments, like the dog scene.
One of my most favorite scenes in anything I ever did was the scene where the dog had been tied to the bumper.
He hooks the leash to the back of the car, cut to the scene where he's driving along the road.
Sweetie, do you hear that rattle?
Where's it coming from?
The dog tied to the bumper was an edgy joke. James Keach sells it.
James Keach got off his motorcycle, and he came up to me and probably gave the best delivery of a line I've ever heard.
Get out of the car.
And so I get in his face about the death of this dog, and I start crying. Clark realizes, oh my God, my dog was on the back of the car. Chevy and I had a really hard time keeping it together.
For a while, we're just both going.
I mean, every time I'd start going, poor little Pooch.
Probably kept up with you for a mile or so.
Chevy would just crack up.
I don't know how we could keep a straight face.
Chevy, he has real tears in his eyes. He was really, really crying.
Those were real tears of laughter.
Aw, Dinky, rest in peace.
Amazingly, this was the toned-down version.
The way John Hughes wrote it, attached to the leash is a bloody dog pelt.
We were actually considering having red trail behind the car. And then I realized, wait, that's way over, the top.
I thought about shooting it that way, and everyone said,
Harold chose not to do that. He thought it would be funnier to reveal what had happened as opposed to starting off telling the audience the dog was dead.
Everyone assumes he got dragged to death. We got all sorts of notes from that one. It's like, I can't believe you dragged that dog. And it's like, lady, there was no dragging. It's in your mind. Got to drink less gin, I think.
I have 3 dogs. I'm a pet lover, but it, I think, was a really funny moment, and it's probably saved a lot of animals' lives. Not really, but...
Beyond the dying, there was the sex. From a vibrating bed...
What's going on? Don't you kids knock anymore?
...to a close encounter in the car.
My head's stuck.
And then the script got really inappropriate.
Did you ever bop your baloney?
John Navin played my cousin. Yeah, he's turned me on to his collection of dirty mags.
Bop your baloney.
Bopping your baloney is great.
To this day, I'm like, ew, what the heck is that?
I'm going steady.
My French kiss, and she says,
So everybody does that.
and I say, yeah, but Daddy says I'm the best at it. Classy.
Wait a second, did she just say what they think she just said?
I think I definitely understood what it was meant to mean, but maybe not what it truly meant.
It's so funny, but yet so horrific at the same time.
And then you wonder why my career went the way it did.
For the teenaged Hall, it was all a lot to handle.
So there's a lot of stimulation going on. There's Beverly, there's Dana, kind of looking at my sister sideways. She was very much mature for her age.
So when Beverly did her famous shower scene, what she didn't know was that young Anthony Michael Hall was trying to sneak in to see her naked.
But she's got a great sex appeal, and I had kind of a Freudian thing going for her.
It came time for Beverly to go into the shower.
I was like 14. I was like trying to sneak on the set, and it was clearly marked on the call sheet. Close set. Nobody come on the set.
Michael was the wild little kid. He was always getting into stuff.
She stands up, takes off her robe, and she's 30 feet away from the shower, and naked walks over to the shower and gets in. And everyone just stops.
I was like literally like creeping up on the set. And when I ran into Maddie, I did get busted that day.
They said, Beverly, you could take your robe off a little closer to the shower. And she said, Bill, I did 400 naked performances in hair. For me to walk naked across this stage is nothing.
Beverly didn't mind undressing, but Christy had other ideas.
There was an issue about how naked I would go for the pool scene.
The wardrobe department called me and said, we have Christy down here. Would you mind coming down and watching her try on lingerie? No, I can do that. I'll be right down.
There was going to be a certain point where I was going to be in like my bra and underwear. So I was having a fitting.
It's a moment I'll never forget, watching Harold approve Christy Brinkley's underwear.
I was very modest, and I couldn't believe that people would come walking in, and I was, hi, how do you do?
Christy Brinkley, the most beautiful woman maybe in the world, standing there wearing her underwear. It's sort of why I got into the film business.
I had a pretty good thing going there at the time of people trying to imagine what was going on underneath my bikini, you know? So I wasn't going to run the risk of losing that.
She was just self-conscious. Everybody was like a panting dog.
I went over to Harold and he said, "Oh, Christy, the nudity is really very important. It's really an integral part of the character." And I was like, "Yeah, right, okay," you know?
I don't think I've ever seen her naked, except that. But otherwise.
Things didn't get any easier when it came to Christie's lines.
I didn't have any acting experience.
She'd been an international fashion model for years and had no problem doing that, and so we just assumed she'd be totally comfortable in front of a film camera.
Everything she'd done up to that point had been like modeling. It was just photographing her moving, dancing, waving, winking, you know.
I went over to Harold and he said, "Just be yourself." And I was like, "Just be myself."
I'm not sure that she anticipated how difficult it would be.
When they called action, Brinkley found herself in the spotlight.
You only go around this crazy merry-go-round once, you know?
She was shaky. I could tell she was nervous.
I could see that she was very nervous because she had a tendency to pout her lips a little bit like a model.
Still, Christie jumped right in.
Wow, this feels great.
I was so stunned that I got through it. I slipped outside and I felt so like I didn't do it well at all that I just burst into tears.
She said, in my mind, I imagined this experience of like being in a stage play where I would come out and I'd do the part perfectly. She said, but it was all little bits. I never felt like I got it all in one take. And I said, yeah, but no one does. Did you ever see Chevy get it all in one take?
Harold put an arm on her shoulder and said, "Christy, if you were terrible, we'd still be in there shooting the scene. You were great." She said, "Really?" And the tears are rolling down her eyes.
And he said, "Well, you think you can do it better?" And I said, "Well, I think." And he goes back in and he goes, "All right, guys, Christy thinks she can do it better. We're going to do one more."
Oh, everybody bring the lights back, bring the cameras back. Christy would like to try it again.
And I heard every single person on the set groan, you know, which is not what you want to hear before you're going to do it again.
How's the water?
Exhilarating.
I'm in deep. I'm in deep.
I think I said everything the exact same way.
4 weeks into shooting, both the Griswolds and the production team were closing in on their finish line. But a few more hurdles still loomed.
There was a lot of controversy between Dick Zeiker and Harold about how far the car should fly.
He really felt the need to go further than anyone thought.
I said, "Well, why don't we try for a world record here?"
Dad, I haven't seen a car for an hour.
Oh, shut up, Audrey. You don't think Dad knows where he's going?
Thank you, Russ.
You're lost.
Halfway through the 60-day shoot, in the summer of 1982, the travel was starting to take its toll. Tensions were rising, especially in the extreme heat, well into the triple digits.
The hard movie, it was summer. I remember how hot it was when we were shooting.
Traveling through the Southwest, the vacation team faced increasingly tricky shoots in Utah's Monument Valley, including one ridiculously difficult stunt.
You can tell something's wrong when your stuntman, his nickname is Crazy Dick Zeiker.
When we did this film, it was the early days of kind of doing that stuff. All I had was a helmet, elbow pads, and a St. Christopher medal.
We thought it'd be very funny to have that clunky station wagon do a very long jump.
Ramis was happy to get the car up in the air, but Zeiker started pushing the distances.
I sort of got this growing sense that there was some debate between Dick Zeiker and Harold about how far the car should fly.
I said, "Well, why don't we try for a world record here?"
He really felt the need to go further than anyone thought.
I told people exactly where I was going to land. I said, "If you guys would like to bet on this, just put your money where your mouth is."
A few dollars changed hands among members of the crew.
People were drawing lines in the sand about how far they thought Zeiker couldn't jump that car.
There was a lot of controversy about how dangerous it was.
Zeiker was confident, but there was no margin for error.
We were in the middle of Monument Valley, so if anything had happened, we would have been totally screwed.
We were in the middle of nowhere, so remote that Indians came to the catering truck.
When I was going to do the jump, the medicine man from the Navajo Nation came down and blessed the car, and blessed me, and blessed the stunt.
I stayed out of the Navajo thing, being an Apache.
When everyone was ready and the truckster was lined up, it was time to jump.
I just remember everybody just standing there like, wow, Zyker is out of his mind.
The car hit that ramp and flew.
Went balls out, as you would say.
That thing took off, man.
Way, way beyond what anyone ever thought.
Everyone was just cheering and shouting and screaming when he finished because it was just brilliant.
In the end, Zyker had jumped the car a record distance, more than half a football field.
The car landed exactly where Dick said he was going to land it.
We jumped at 173 feet.
Everybody was like blown away that he had done that.
That was a wonderful stunt. It amazes me how people can do those things. And then, of course, we cut to me and I'm going,
I stabbed my brain.
I love having to start a scene where you're just doing this.
I just got my period.
They made it through the stunt, but now the heat was really on, as the desert sun baked down on the cast and crew.
That was one of the hottest days ever. It was really, really hot. It was like 120 in the shade.
The earth was not earth, it's sand. You can't just run around and move something. It takes always two guys to lift something that one guy could ordinarily do.
Crew guys were like falling out, passing out. It was just like crazy hot, like Arizona, Africa hot.
I take my watch off and throw it because it's too hot. Just my wrist is too hot now.
Staggering out of the heat like a desert mirage, Chevy of Arabia.
We had no idea that he's going to come out looking like Lawrence of Arabia. It just cracked us up.
Clark comes reeling out of the desert and into a tourist trap.
He finally staggers up to this gas station, and the car is there, and all the family members are there.
There was a gas station literally out in the middle of nowhere.
Now on that gas station.
It had to be out in the middle of nowhere. We were taking him for everything he had.
Never heard of no one so shit all stupid as you driving off that road.
You must have got manure for brains.
And he said, well, how much are the repairs? I'm this pretty blue-collar guy, and I go, well, how much you got?
What's your sheriff think of your business practices?
I pull my wallet out. Boom. I am the sheriff.
And I'm the deputy.
Yeah, well, I'm from out of town, so what's the bill?
We take him for everything he's got.
All of it, boy. And I mean all of it.
I decided, since I was going to be a mechanic, that I needed to have some grease on me. I had a hard time finding grease around there, going under trucks and cars. Method. It's like kind of a method acting thing. Recently, I dusted off a VHS copy that I had and looked at it, and I missed a bunch of spots.
I get his car working to a degree.
They fixed the truckster, but they couldn't fix old Aunt Edna. Imogene Coca was terrified of car travel.
We had to drive the family truckster everywhere. She was terrified of being in a car.
She was really traumatized by the travel aspect.
She'd have her little hand up, holding herself on the roof, making sure that she was secure, because she was so afraid.
She was so freaked out. When they were crossing the mountains, she would lie down on the floor of the car so she didn't have to look out the windows.
So it made perfect sense that when Edna finally passed away, she would do it in the family truckster.
My brother and I pushed her onto each other back and forth, saying,
I'm sick of her lying on me all the time.
We think she's sleeping in the back seat, and she's stiff as a board.
Let her be, she's fine.
She's dead.
Ew, a dead person's touching me.
We went to Flagstaff, Arizona. We shot Aunt Edna through the rain on top of the station wagon.
And it was raining and it was miserable. I mean, they were talking about, like, can we really put her on the roof of the car? It was like, we tried to go as far as we could go.
Chevy, in his brilliance, takes the purse that was in the car and puts it up on the roof.
They would say a few last words to wish Aunt Edna well on her final trip.
Baruch atah, hallelujah.
Clark, this is a serious matter.
I don't know what's worse, putting her on the roof of the car or leaving her on the stoop for her family to find her.
It's funny that a movie can like have a dead grandmother and a dead dog and people still love it.
With all this going on, it's no wonder Clark loses it.
I think Aunt Edna is the pinnacle that kind of shifts our whole family into craziness.
They're in Arizona, and the family wants to go back home because they've been through so much.
You can tell it's a time bomb about to blast off because the kids are over it. Ellen's now lost her temper.
When somebody finally lets things out in anger, so much truth is spoken.
I think you're all in the head.
Clark had suddenly had a serious psychotic break.
This is no longer a vacation.
It's a quest for fun, and you're going to have fun, and I'm going to have fun. We're all going to have so much fun.
You'll be whistling Symphony Doodah out of your holes.
Who the hell ever says that?
He tried it without the obscenities and it didn't work at all.
But it is going to give us a rating we probably don't want.
But it was a great moment, and he did it. He really delivered that speech, I thought.
This happens. This is real. He's an everyman. So you got to give every man that speech.
The real punchline there is,
Dad, you want to ask her something?
which comes from Michael.
Don't touch!
This perfect American father had totally come unglued.
It was really a great turning point in the film.
I thought that scene was so true
I gotta be crazy. I'm on a pilgrimage to see a moose.
and such an insight into part of Clark Griswold that needs good psychotherapy, you know?
As cast and crew arrived back in LA for the last 2 weeks of shooting, the late summer was getting hotter and hotter. And the hotter it got, the more tempers began to flare, especially Chevy's.
He was temperamental.
He was just out of his mind almost all the time.
I think he lost it more than one time.
Yelling at lizards and snakes and anything that got in his way.
There was one time when he really went off.
Day 47 out of 56 shoot days, the cast and crew were in the final stretch.
So we were all shooting in the Griswold family garage, loading up the car. Take after take of Chevy putting the luggage on top. I could see he was getting irritated because it was so hot and it was so unpleasant.
We were trying to pull this car out of the garage, making the joke that all the suitcases are going to come off.
Something ruined the take. He was so frustrated.
I'm one of the best swearers there are. I say things that are just so off the wall.
He was standing there holding a small duffel bag.
I don't know if the heat had gotten to me, but I was just angry. I don't know what it was about.
And I thought, oh, he's going to throw it. And I see him look, and there's a light. No, can't throw it at the light.
Just angry.
Camera, can't throw it at the camera. And I'm sitting right next to the camera. I go, oh, he's going to throw it at me.
Threw it towards Harold.
And I was so ready for it. I knocked it down with my foot.
Harold's reaction was,
you son of a don't you ever throw anything at me again.
Don't throw suitcases at me. Don't do that.
These people have been out here longer than you have. They're just as hot as you are. We're just as uncomfortable as you are.
Chevy, don't throw a suitcase at me.
So cool it, get it together,
He demands respect.
He might have even apologized for throwing something at me.
I mean, I've apologized so many times. It was an empty suitcase.
As the cast and crew soon found out, hot tempers on the set were the least of their problems.
And then we got to the ending, and it's like...
Suddenly all the air went out of the movie.
You can't really tell when you're shooting.
It was painful. Dead silence.
I think the worst is behind us.
Back home in Los Angeles from their multi-week road trip, the cast and crew were heading into the home stretch. The team had one scene left to shoot. When Clark and the family find Wally World closed for repairs, they confront Roy Wally, the owner of Wally World.
Chevy freaks out. He buys a pellet gun. He gets his movie star map and drives to Roy Wally's house.
We show up at his mansion, and he's there having lunch with some executives of his.
Chevy kind of hijacks the meeting. Damn, I want my dime's worth of entertainment.
And at gunpoint, we make him entertain us.
He danced for us. He did a little show for us.
With the final scene shot, they edited the film together and brought it before a test audience.
I remember screening it at Warner Brothers. I think we had a tape recorder in the audience, hoping that there would be some laughter.
For 80 minutes, the audience was hysterical. Loved every minute of the first 80 minutes.
It's the most exhilarating feeling because we've all been working on this thing for, a year or more.
And then we got to the ending, and it's like... Last 20 minutes, not a single laugh.
Dead silence. Suddenly all the air went out of the movie.
People came out like, that was not very funny ending.
We're hoping that because everything was working so well, that the audience would just go along. Audiences are much more savvy than that.
It was as bad as I feared.
They weren't satisfied.
We need to go back and do some things.
They were very specific about feeling let down.
Harold and I both came to the same conclusion. For the entire movie, all they talk about is going to Wally World, and we never see Wally World.
The original ending didn't work. It was kind of a letdown for audiences.
Comedy is a very funny thing. This is what happens. And then you go through your paces.
They'll test a film and see if it actually plays and works to its maximum potential.
We had to end the movie a different way.
You know, you want that payoff.
They thought it would be so much better if we actually went in to Wally World, even though it's closed.
And we don't have to hijack Roy Wally. We have to hijack Wally World.
They knew the answer, but it wasn't an easy one. To give audiences what they wanted, they were going to have to reshoot the ending.
Well, Harold and I went to see Bob Daly, who was head of the studio. We said, we want to go to Wally World and let people see a real amusement park. And he said, how much? I said, another $500,000.
Given the green light for the reshoot, John Hughes was brought back in to do a rewrite and get the Griswolds inside Wally World. They would bust into the park, take the security guards hostage, and get the Wally World vacation for which they'd driven 2,000 miles.
Originally, Wally World was going to be Disneyland. It just got denied. We had to create something completely new.
Everything else was based on real locations that existed. It was more about figuring out how to create Wally World without having access to the real place.
They decided to create their own Wally World out of multiple locations.
The parking lot of Wally World was actually the parking lot at Santa Anita Racetrack.
They don't run the horses in the summer, so they were super cooperative.
It's a very old-fashioned, beautiful California racetrack. But we wanted it to look like Wally World.
We did matte paintings and stuff to create the distant view of the park.
First one's here.
In those days, you did the big wide shot of Clark and the family.
What we were shooting in that wide shot was basically the parking lot.
The top of the frame was cut where the racetrack booths were, and then everything above that cut in the frame, that was all painted by hand by people called matte artists.
It created a pretty cool effect, but you can tell now, man, it looks like an animation. You know, it looks like it was drawn, you know.
Since the wide shot of Wally World was just a painting, the rides were in another place altogether.
Then we went and scouted Six Flags Magic Mountain, and when we're scouting, the park's empty. So whatever ride we wanted to go on, all the big roller coasters, let's ride that again. We just had this incredible day with Six Flags all to ourselves.
The key to the new scene was the park's security guard. Harold Ramis had just the guy.
And I knew exactly who should play the security guard because John Candy used to do a character on SCTV named Paul Fist in Your Face. You talk like the guy in the movie, very earnest and very serious.
That's very important. Always be polite, even when you're talking to bad people.
John's agent asked for $1 million. I had a $500,000 budget. So I had to go back and get another $1 million. John was hot at the time, and they said, okay.
Once John was in, there was a huge sigh of relief that no matter what this thing turns out to be, John and Chevy together were going to be some sort of buoy to bring us home.
And to play the part of Roy Wally, they wanted a Walt Disney look-alike. They had found a dead ringer in an unlikely source, a famous Hollywood actor who had all but disappeared.
I had seen a picture of Eddie Bracken in a newspaper saying that he was playing in a theater in New Jersey. I looked at the picture and my God, there was Walt Disney.
Nobody really knew, how he was. He hadn't worked in a really long time.
But Eddie Bracken wasn't just any actor. He was an old-time Hollywood legend.
Eddie Bracken was in two of the most popular comedies of the 40s.
He was a big star in the 40s and 50s for Preston Sturges, who was one of the great comedy directors of that period.
He was an amazing kind of song and dance man, old show business guy.
The idea of working with a great legend like that was a total kick for Harold. So the fact that this historical figure was in our movie was just amazing.
With all the details in place, they had 4 days to do the reshoot. But there were just a few small continuity problems.
I go back to LA to shoot the scene. It was literally like 4 or 5 months later, so puberty kicked in like another notch for me. My voice had dropped, and I had like some pimples. I was like seriously in the height of puberty, and Chevy did nothing but humiliate me and bring it right to everyone's attention.
The pimples weren't the issue. Paul's height was.
I had just hit my growth spurt. I'm clearly inches taller, looking even more awkward than I already did for the 95% of the film.
1 minute he's this tall, and 1 minute he's only like this much taller than Beverly and I. He had grown almost a whole head size.
I'd gotten like 4 inches taller. Wow, something's happening there.
By the end, he's like this gangly guy, getting closer to Chevy's height, 6'4" as Chevy.
You can actually see that in the film, which is kind of funny.
Originally, they said I was going to be the older sister. But by the end, they really worked it into the film that he was the older brother.
There at the gates of Wally World, Harold Ramis decided to stage a race.
We wanted them to run, but the only way to justify it was for Chevy to say, we're going to park here.
First one's here. Yes, but then why are we parking here? Well, the first one's out. Come on, I'll race you.
So they start running. We did it in slow motion. It worked out very funny, but we had to do it several times.
On the pavement, the heat was brutal.
It was about 105 degrees, and the pavement was like 130 degrees. Chevy had heat frustration. Michael Hall actually got heat stroke and had to go to the hospital. It was a costly scene in human terms, but it was pretty funny the way they run.
At the end of that run, Chevy let out his frustration on the moose.
We finally get to the amusement park, and there's this moose, and it says,
"Sorry, folks.
America's favorite fun park is closed for repairs."
And by the way, the voice of Marty Moose, Harold Ramis.
Sorry.
and Chevy gets so angry he punches the moose's nose.
One of my favorite times was hitting Harold. Bam! Then he goes, "Sorry, folks."
Clark, what are you doing?
Now the movie was hanging in the balance. They were about to do the last shoot inside the park, up on the roller coasters themselves. But would this reshoot save the film?
Your worry is, will people like it as much as we think they should?
We had no idea how funny it was going to be.
You never know what's going to reach an audience. We had no idea.
Sorry, folks, park's closed. The moose out front should have told you.
It was the end of 1982, and the entire production of National Lampoon's Vacation was teetering on the brink. They had just 4 days to reshoot the key final scenes.
We kidnap John Candy, make him take us on all the rides.
We're not really violent people. This is our first gun.
No, it isn't. You couldn't do any better than John in that role.
But when they got inside Wally World, it wasn't only John Candy's security guard who was freaking out. Several cast members had a problem with the rides themselves. Chevy didn't like roller coasters.
I don't like getting to the top of something and looking 1,000 feet down.
Beverly didn't do rides at all.
My double did most of the roller coaster stuff for me. I get sick of roller coasters.
Even the freshly cast John Candy had issues when it came to the amusement park.
The reason I was in that scene in the front car with him is that no one else could fit with John in the front. Chevy was a very big guy, and John was a big guy. Even Dana didn't fit.
Finally, John Candy jammed himself in, and they took off. Eddie Bracken was supposed to enjoy one last ride with the family.
The script called for him to forgive us and also enjoy some of the rides with us. I said, now look, have you been on the roller coaster? No, I don't care about that. I've been doing this all my life. I just want you to take a very slow climb, and then when you get to the top, it's very frightening. I said, okay, I'm just, warning you. Finally, you're going up the ramp. He's still playing Roy Wally, and I'm still Clark. And just as we get to the top and look down, he goes, "Oh, That was one of the great moments. Eddie claiming that everything is fine, he's been doing this all his life, and then just completely losing character. Just, I've never been on one, obviously.
We shot that roller coaster sequence, and that became the new ending.
The 4-day reshoot was wrapped. But after the failure of the film at the previews, the question now was, would it make a difference?
Your worry is, will people like it as much as we think they should?
We had no idea how funny it was going to be.
We didn't know where this was going.
You never know what's going to reach an audience. We had no idea.
In the edit room, they were playing with the last act.
You edit it and improve it even more, and you hope the movie will translate to audiences.
The original ending was not satisfactory. If there's one thing Harold wanted to do, it was portray this as a real story.
There's so many funny things in it. There's so many things that make me cringe because they don't really fit together.
Meanwhile, the editing team was also trying to add in music to amp up the energy in the film.
It was at a time in Hollywood where you couldn't have a movie without a main title song and an end title song. That was what everybody was doing. And so we were looking for somebody who might write a main title song.
They turned to one of the hot bands at the time, Fleetwood Mac. There was just one problem.
They were sort of not together. Somebody said, what about Lindsey Buckingham? And I think initially it was, well, Lindsey Buckingham, what about the rest? Can't we get the whole band?
But once they actually heard his compositions, they decided to give the Fleetwood Mac songwriter another look.
Harold and I started listening to his solo stuff, and it was amazing.
Lindsey got it and knew what we were going for.
I remember going to his house in Bel Air with Harold, and he was playing all the instruments. He basically a one-man band at that point. Turned out he didn't need the rest of the band to create incredible music.
They hired Lindsey Buckingham, and he got to work on Vacation's theme, Holiday Road.
You know right away, as soon as you hear that, kind of where it's from.
Holiday Road was fantastic. It gave the movie the energy that it needed.
To hear Holiday Road was certainly just one of the high points.
Holiday Road.
Holiday Road.
Puts me in the best mood.
Finally, the producers felt all the elements of a successful film were coming together. They hoped the new ending would save the picture. But no one was exactly sure how the movie would do, especially given the edgy comedy.
We knew going into it that there were people who were going to have a little bit of a problem with it. But if it played comedically well enough, then hopefully it would transcend anyone's sort of concern.
I think the studio didn't realize what they had.
It's hard with succeeding in Hollywood. Everyone always wants you to fail.
I just remember watching the movie for the first time, all of us on the edge of their seats.
On July 29th, 1983, Vacation premiered to less than glowing reviews. Critics called the movie a bad trip, a dead end. They told audiences it was no picnic. It looked as if the holiday was over. But while the film didn't appeal to the critics, the audience had a much different reaction. As more and more people started coming out, Vacation pulled in over $8 million, making back its budget in the opening weekend.
I was on Martha's Vineyard rewriting Ghostbusters when Vacation opened, and I got a call from the studio saying we had a really good weekend.
I was in Italy, my agent calling saying it's a hit, and I'm going, it's a hit? Nobody imagined that it would have the success that it did.
It hit #1 at the box office, and it would become one of the all-time favorite summer pictures.
It was a funny movie for laughs. The LPM quotient, laughs per minute, it was pretty high.
It's a great fantasy to have an amusement park all to yourself. No crowds, just ride whatever you want when you want to.
And it worked. I mean, it really worked. People would talk, and, people got into being a Clark or not a Clark. How about that Christy Brinkley? I mean, there were so many elements.
I remember thinking, I'm glad this actually turned out as funny as the script read.
We put that ending on, and then it really felt like, oh, this is working. This is what the audience paid to experience.
Almost immediately, it became clear that all sorts of viewers were enjoying this little road trip.
I remember Harold was on the Letterman show, and Letterman says, funny movie, how about that car salesman scene? Whoa! And I bolt up from the couch. I'm mesmerized. Oh my God, they're talking about me.
And in the aftermath, this one movie would change the lives of many of its cast and crew.
Yeah, I had no idea that it would become, a franchise.
I don't know if anybody could have seen all of the sequels and everything coming.
Nobody knew. That was just like a wonderful surprise.
We could have gone anywhere we wanted to this summer, But when I asked my kids, when I said, kids, you remember when I said, where would you like to go this summer more than any place in the world, huh? What'd you say?
Why?
Shut up, Russ.
In the weeks following its release, it became clear that what started as a small, offbeat comedy with no major expectations had become something very different. Traveling together, the Vacation team had bonded in a seat-of-the-pants adventure. And this little road trip ended up in a destination no one anticipated.
Yeah, I had no idea that it would become, a franchise.
I don't know if anybody could have seen all of the sequels and everything coming.
Nobody knew. That was just like a wonderful surprise.
National Lampoon's Vacation didn't just become a cult classic. This low-budget movie would launch a franchise of a half a dozen films and would turbocharge the careers of everyone involved. Harold Ramis became a major comic filmmaker, with a string of winners from Ghostbusters to Groundhog Day.
Started working on Ghostbusters after that, and so for several years there, I thought, well, we can do no wrong.
Once we'd both seen Christy Brinkley in underwear, We started making movies together. We did a movie called Club Paradise with Robin Williams and Peter O'Toole. Then we went off and did Groundhog Day, a bunch of other ridiculous things.
Chevy Chase would go on to be one of Hollywood's biggest comic stars in a number of hits like Fletch, Spies Like Us, and the Vacation series.
I still get people reacting to me because of particularly the first one. I think that movie stands out for people who see me.
I can't really think of anybody else who could have done that any better than Chevy.
Chevy could pull stuff off that I don't think a lot of other guys could have done.
Chevy made so many great movies. This was really the foundation and the highlight for his career, which is why he ended up back on television. Sorry, Jeff.
I don't know why, but I keep turning down things like Ghostbusters. I do something called Ghost Milk now.
Today, Chevy's a hit again, starring in TV's Community. Vacation would also launch the career of the late John Hughes.
You really can't talk about Vacation without talking about John Hughes, because it did start with him.
His career was incredible after Vacation. Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Home Alone. He was just incredibly prolific.
John Hughes will remain probably the greatest voice of youth in American comedy. What a talent.
John Hughes was, I think, the most amazing observer of teen life in the United States. I don't think anyone has ever come close to doing it on a consistent basis like him.
John Hughes went on to create his own genre, and Anthony Michael Hall was his protagonist.
Anthony Michael Hall became a teen heartthrob in John Hughes' movies.
Pretty in Pink and Weird Science. Genius.
I don't know. I don't know what he saw in me. I think he was great at allowing people to just go from there, you know, and kind of give them their wings.
John Candy's career would get an extra boost before his untimely death.
John was an incredibly gifted actor. It wasn't just jokes. It was all character stuff. His comedy came out of a real place.
He didn't play like Oliver Hardy off of his heaviness. He played like a dancer, and he danced with his voice.
Candy would go on to win a special place in the heart of audiences. From Splash to Home Alone to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
He was just a legend, great guy, really, really a great person.
I mean, he was funnier than hell, and you had to love him.
For one small film, Vacation would have a remarkable impact, kickstarting so many careers, like Jane Krakowski's.
I do think there are certain parallels between the comedy I'm doing now on 30 Rock with Vacation. I think it's a very similar kind of comedy. The improvisational sections that were in the movie, we're still bringing that to 30 Rock into the jobs that we do today.
Everybody was kind of novices.
National Lampoon's Vacation was the first movie that I ever developed that was made at Warner Brothers. So it's near and dear to my heart.
By the time we did Christmas Vacation, he was head of the studio.
Beverly D'Angelo would go on to a long career in dozens of film roles, most recently starring in TV's Entourage.
A lot of people have been watching Entourage, but Ellen Griswold and the Vacation movies are the ones that have touched the most hearts.
And because of their time on the road together, many of them became long-term buddies, like Miriam and Beverly.
Beverly is just such a great broad.
And we got to be very good friends. In fact, when I had my kids, I called up Miriam and said, I'm here alone with 2 4-pound twins. You better get over here. And she came over.
And that happily married couple, Clark and Ellen, they're still together.
Beverly is so funny and so talented. I mean, maybe one of the greats. And she can sing, she can do anything with her very lovely breasts. Just kidding, Beth.
We're very, very good friends. I love him. He calls me his other wife. I've actually had a longer relationship with him than anybody else who I've been married to or lived with. Longer and more consistent.
28 years later, Vacation is still the little engine that could. The road trip film that resonates with its audience and its cast.
I've done close to over 70 projects now. I did Beverly Hills 90210. National Lampoon's Vacation, playing Audrey, unequivocally is the #1 thing people recognize me for.
It was the kind of comedy we all wanted to do.
To make a comedy like this that started my career and that has really held up, that people love, is a great feeling. It's a real honor.
People still come up to me and say, hey, were you guys at Vicky Vacation? I'm like, yeah, I was.
There were so many elements that brought people to that movie and made them watch it again. frankly, I think it's good comedy. And it has a story you want to follow, and it has your everyman, and it has the jealousies and the norms of sort of a normal kind of life.
I think it's that combination of very adult, hip, smart, edgy comedy with a very classical American form.
I, sort of watch myself through the fingers, when my scenes come on. It's like, ah. But I'm so thrilled to be a part of it.
I thought I was getting involved with kind of an off-the-beaten-path picture. I didn't think that it was going to be a cornerstone of my connection with the public for the rest of my life.
Not long ago, it was announced that the franchise is starting up again. A new installment where Rusty takes the kids to Wally World for one last visit before it closes forever. And so it may be that this vacation never really ends.
I did play Clark, and I could play him again.
Holiday Road. Can't find anywhere. We're going. We're going.
Smile.
Oh, yes, Stinky. We remember him well.
Come to Wally World with me.